Hey friends, welcome to the next episode of the E2 Effective Elders podcast. We are welcoming Dr. Jim Estep, Academic Dean of the CCCB, Central Christian College of the Bible in Moberly, Missouri, and co-founder of E2. Jim is going to help us today explore how do we find another member for the church staff.
Hey everyone, welcome to the E2 Effective Elders podcast. E2 is devoted to coaching your elder team to win by providing biblical and practical resources in authentic relationships. E2 wants nothing more than to equip you to move God's kingdom forward in the place you're serving Jesus. Visit us at e2elders.org and please share this good word with others.
Thanks to our friends at CDF Capital, we are able to bring to you yet another episode in the E2 Effective Elders podcast. Thank you, CDF, for investing in elders literally across the country and around the world. Today, we welcome Dr. Jim Estep to our podcast, and Jim is a longtime friend, also a co-founder of E2. Jim and I, our paths crossed years ago when Jim was welcomed to the faculty at Lincoln Christian University, and today he serves as the academic dean, the vice president of CCCB, a very strong college that now has graduate education available because of Dr. Estep's very imaginative entrepreneurial spirit. So Jim, welcome to our podcast today.
Great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, and you look very happy because where are you, buddy?
I'm in Orlando, Florida. It is 86 degrees.
And sunny?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I just want you to know that here today we are in the negative wind chill factor already, and the snow is flying.
We don't have a wind chill, we just have a tropical breeze, so it works.
Well, enjoy the tropical breeze. And can you tell our listeners why you are in Orlando, Florida right now?
Yes, it's the annual gathering of the Association for Biblical Higher Education, an accreditation body that accredits ministry training institutions.
Great. Is the conference going well?
It is. It's in its second day, and really it's been great seeing people who are like-minded, who are on the same path, and actually sharing resources, ideas, and just collaborating with one another. It's been a great morning already.
Well, and you're wrapping up your first year just about at CCCB. You
Yes.
will be in a few months. Give us a real quick comment about life back in the academic chair for you. Are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it. I enjoyed being in located ministry for 2 years in Georgia. When the opportunity presented itself to go back into academics, really felt the call to do that. And once I got there, I realized this is really the pool that I like to swim in. So thoroughly enjoying it, and especially getting to know young men and women who are training for ministry, who are ready to go on the mission field, preparing to be counselors. In other words, just being in that environment with other people who like to be around those who are in the ministry of preparation and preparing them for the next generation of kingdom service.
That's great. Well, I could not be happier for you. Leah and I are thrilled that you and Karen are back in an academic community. It is obvious that the Lord has gifted you for the chair in which you sit. And I'm excited because the Lord has certainly used you just in your first year on the faculty to implement a graduate program for CCC.
Yes,
Why
it's its
don't
first
you tell our
graduate program
listeners a
ever.
little bit too about how we're connected, E2 with CCCB?
Well, CCCB has been a very big supporter of E2. We've actually spoken there on numerous occasions, either as individuals or as the whole team. In addition to that, the master's program is actually being taught by E2 members. So for example, you'll be teaching a class, I'll be teaching a class, David Roadcup will be teaching a class, as well as others. And the opportunity there is for E2 and CCCB to really synergize with one another and do more than we could do separately.
Yeah, it's
So
really,
we're looking forward to a launch in the fall.
uh-huh.
And you can go to our website, and there's a banner at the top that says for more information about graduate studies. So
Awesome. Great. Well, today we're going to talk about how to find a new staff member for the local church. And you and David Roadcup, our other co-founder, we've talked about that a number of times,
Yes.
that it's growing increasingly difficult to find people for a church staff. You want to talk about that a little bit, please? Why is it so hard? Why does it take so long today to find somebody to join the staff of a church?
Well, I would say one of the first issues is coming from the Bible college seat, the perspective that I'm in. There are a lot of churches not encouraging young men and women to go to Bible college
Mm-hmm.
or to go on to seminary to prepare themselves for a life of service in the church. That used to be something we really promoted a lot. In fact, we used to encourage everybody to go to Bible college for maybe 1 year, get some of their basic education done, maybe formal training in scripture, give them a 1 year hiatus before going off to university,
Mm-hmm.
being in an atmosphere of faith. Once again, that's just not encouraged anymore. When we talk about career counselors, actually, when I was in high school, my career counselor was willing to talk to me about a life in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not even brought up. So we don't see a lot of people being encouraged to enter the ministry. And also, a lot of churches are simply opting for the path of hiring from within.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once again, that works many times, but the people they're hiring from within don't have the biblical depth
Mm-hmm.
that a Bible college or seminary education can provide.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leadership pipeline is just getting lower and lower in terms of the next generation and who's going to be ready to step forward.
So it's going to be a real challenge
It
for the
is.
church to redirect young people who may be experiencing a call of God on his or her life
Mhm.
for vocational sacred ministry. Mm-hmm.
Right. And even when they feel that call and voice it, I know many times parents or others just don't encourage it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
telling them to look elsewhere
Mm-hmm.
for a
Right.
career.
Correct. Well, let's say it's now time for a church to begin the search process. What do you think are a few of the essential questions or issues that they need to deal with if they're going to have a good search experience?
Well, I would say one of the first things is they really need to be able to articulate what they're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
If they're adding to the staff or replacing a staff member, they need to make sure they know who they're looking for. I don't mean a name, but what does this ministry need to take the next step?
Mm-hmm.
And in given that, you better understand the parameters of the ministry. I think another thing they have to really focus on is, given that, can we create a team of people who can interview, process the applications, etc., and keep their eye on, we're looking for this kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that, I would also say they've got to be able to come up with a position description. Now, a position description is important, but let me just tell you from practical experience, many times people will draw up a job description, a position description that no one could possibly fill.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have to do is brainstorm, get the team together, talk about the position. Now let's describe the person that we need to find. And after they've put 15 or 20 qualities up on the whiteboard that no one could possibly fulfill, you need to identify the 5 or 6 that are absolutely essential, the
Right.
non-negotiables. It might be they have to be from the Restoration movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It might be that they have to have some experience.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever those few essentials are, everything else becomes optional.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have a team together, they understand what they're trying to accomplish, they've created the position description, they also need to develop a communication strategy. And by communication strategy, I mean within the team,
Uh-huh. The team.
they have to be able to communicate almost instantaneously. So is that going to be done by text or email? Is there going to be a shared folder on a drive
Mm-hmm.
that we can put all the resumes in so everybody has access to it? Not to mention the fact when even in analyzing and reviewing those resumes, there has to be some kind of apparatus that everybody's using to generate a common feedback
Right.
pool. But in addition, how are you going to communicate to the congregation?
Right.
Don't forget the congregation is sitting there going, what are we doing? And we realize we're active on the team. We're meeting all the time. We're getting resumes in. But how are we letting the congregation know of the progress?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, we also have to realize in terms of communication that interviewing is a two-way process.
Right.
Don't
Exactly.
forget that we always think we're interviewing them. They, in fact, are interviewing us.
Mm-hmm.
Were we really prepared to do an interview, whether that be digitally or an on-site interview?
Right.
And so really, I just think of identifying the need, creating the team, drawing up the job description, then figuring out preliminaries on communication. And this is all done before really we even have a candidate in mind or even a pool of applicants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is all the homework that goes into the selection process even before we have a person to look at.
Right. And I think that a very important part of that preliminary work that touches upon a couple of things, communicating outside of the
Mm-hmm.
church, but also looking relevant. For example, if somebody is interviewing us to join our staff, the church needs to look relevant. And what would be an important preparation piece would be to create a page on the website or multiple pages that if a candidate is considering applying to that church, he or she would go to that home page, the landing page, and there would even be a link for the position that is being sought. That person could just click on that link, a whole new page opens with demographics about the community,
Absolutely.
history of the church, that profile that you make mention of, the description of the position should be on that page. The individual would be able to visit that ministry setting, even pictures of the community, et cetera, or of the church itself, and have a sense, does that individual submit credentials or not? And they could even, on that website, on that page, upload, be it a digital file of a message being preached. They could attach their credentials, their vita, their resume. They could even click on a link that would open an email that would go to the person there at the church who's receiving all of the credentials and to actually apply for the job digitally rather than in the old school way of sending through snail mail a letter. Because, I believe that that's a part of this communication element of which you speak, and it helps us to attract people to a more modern era.
Yes, and in fact, if there's a young ministry couple, they're going to be raising questions about the quality of the schools in the area.
Right.
And if his wife's going to get a job outside the house, they want to know about the economy of the area.
Mm-hmm.
So all that kind of information can be put on that website. And as you put it, the application could be done right there, which, by the way, the team would have to have a point person who gets all of those, tracks them all. It also responds, we've received your material. Immediately, so they know somebody's actually looking at this. There's nothing worse than a church that spends all the time collecting, but never lets anybody know they received it. So the applicant is going, well, it's been 3 weeks and I've heard nothing.
Right, exactly. Very unprofessional.
And so it puts a very, very positive image when you have that kind of website, the ability to apply digitally and an immediate response to it. Because once those applications come in, which, by the way, they will come in because word of mouth, but also because you begin to engage networks. You can call other ministers. You can call your local Bible college or seminary. You can contact people at other churches and say, do you have any ideas who may be interested in this or someone who fits this position description?
Correct.
So you start engaging your network and it kind of snowballs because all of a sudden you'll start having applicants. And once you have the applicants, this is where you have to have some kind of rubric to assess them.
Perfect.
That's where you have to have something that says, here were our non-essentials. These were our essentials. So does the person pass the essentials?
Right.
If they pass, then they move to the next stage, further review of their application material. If they don't have the essentials, then they're immediately rejected. I mean, once again, if you're saying this is a non-negotiable, you don't negotiate on it.
Yeah, so that triage, what you're making mention of,
Right.
if they do not meet the essential, then whoever is the recipient of that applicant, and they don't meet the essentials, then that applicant in a method of triage should have the authority by which to send a very kind letter. Thank you for applying, etc. We've received your credentials. We'll be back with you very quickly. And then truly in a prompt manner would write
Right.
back and say, thank you, but we do not believe this is a match at this time, and send an encouraging word to
Yes.
that applicant that God does have a plan for that person somewhere in ministry at some point in time. Now, the
And
one
this is
thing
also
too,
good for the team because they're not stuck with looking over every single application that comes in
exactly,
when it could have been immediately removed from the pile.
right. And what we would want to do is make sure that we move those applicants through as you said, a rubric, a triage, so that there can be momentum. Now, you did make mention of something that I thought of a moment ago. You mentioned networking. You mentioned contacting other churches, etc. So what you described there is more of, hey, we're going to do this internally. We're going to leverage our networks, our relationships. What do you think about outsourcing the search? What about a slingshot, a Vanderblumen? There's another ministry search called Fruit Group that specializes primarily in worship ministry positions. What's your thought, your take on that?
Those are very good services that can help match up people who are would have otherwise never been connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a problem with that. It's the 21st century equivalent to contacting your Bible college and looking at the list of ministries.
Right.
But at the same time, what I fear, and this has been my experience, is that churches that depend on the third party to find their minister,
Mm-hmm.
when they abandon or lay aside all their responsibility and say, well, one of those search companies is going to find our next person.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not their job. Their job is just simply to get the applicants to us.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so once again, the fault I see is when churches turn over the decision-making authority to one of those search companies, and all of a sudden they say, well, the slingshot send us this person.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we don't do due diligence.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that we don't screen the applicant, that we don't interview the applicant, that we don't follow through with anything else in our search protocol.
Correct.
They're just getting us names that they feel are a good match. They're doing the triage, if you will, and
Yes.
maybe a little bit of the initial,
Right.
review.
And
But for example, good.
Yeah, and they can certainly save a great deal of work on the front end
Yes.
for a local church that could be struggling getting names and potential candidates.
And you just keyed in on something when you said on the front end, realize all this work is being done. The position description, the creating of a drive, the web information, before we have any candidates in mind. This is our homework leading up to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I guess I bring this up that afterwards you've got to be able to screen the applicants
Mm-hmm.
with that rubric and then really isolate maybe 2 or 3 for a digital interview.
Mm-hmm.
Interview them over Skype
Mm-hmm.
or Zoom or some video chat platform. And then from that interview, the team can decide to call one person in, one family in, for an actual on-site interview. I know there's some who say, no, let's just bring a bunch of them on site. But what I have found is when you have multiple people brought on site, introduced to people in the church, and then you say, okay, we're going to call so-and-so, there's a whole group of people saying, well, that's not the one I liked.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to division. So what
Right.
you're doing is a funnel. You get all the applicants,
Mm-hmm.
you do the triage, you do the screening, you do the video interview, and then you determine one candidate to
Mm-hmm.
bring in and
Yep.
really, entertain on campus
Right.
with
Hmm.
meeting people, sharing with them, going out with the team, going out with the elders, meeting the ministry staff, etc.
Hmm. So to wrap up, because we want to be mindful of our time, you at the conference, but also those who are listening to the podcast. What I'm picking up from you, there are obviously some new approaches that we have to
Yes.
consider to this because of the new challenges that we
Hmm.
face in the local church for
Sure.
refilling staff positions with that leadership pipeline
Yes.
decreasing in volume. All right. So some new things that we have to try, particularly with regard to technology, also with regard to perhaps outsourcing part of the process to a third party. But some things never change, and that would be that one-on-one search with the
Yes.
individual, making sure that there's a match personality, as well as
Mhm.
all of those many essentials that the local church has identified. And, we haven't mentioned this, but you and I would be quick to agree, we cannot underplay in any way the importance of prayer and fasting. We must depend greatly on the Lord Jesus to enable us to find this ideal person.
I would hope a search team would spend a lot of time in prayer and fasting, and that part of the communication strategy with the
Yes.
congregation is
Hmm.
to ask them to join in
Absolutely.
periodically with the team,
Yes.
so that the whole thing, the whole process is
Yeah.
just bathed in prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in closing, I want to point all of our listeners to an article that you wrote in our playbook, and it's play number 26. Is that correct? Play number,
Yes.
yeah,
26.
the minister's search. So what we want people to remember in our new elders playbook, filled with over 50 individual plays, we've got this one in here that Dr. Jim wrote on a minister search process, and in it are even questions to
Okay.
use with potential candidates. It's a great resource for people. Hey, Dr. Jim, you enjoy the sunny South right now, because I bet
I
when you
will.
go home to Moberly, Missouri, you're going to be putting that winter coat on.
Karen and I will be driving home Saturday and Sunday, and I'm not sure we packed a coat. That's the only problem. We're not thinking when we pulled away. So
Well,
thank you for the opportunity, Gary.
you bet. Thanks for your friendship. I'm just so grateful that the Lord made our paths to cross many years ago. So enjoy. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.